brave one.
They might be on the water and they might be in XCAT, but they might as well be on a chessboard at this point. It is all about tactics. It's all about who is made the right choice even before they get in the water, to be honest. You know, there's so many different setup changes that you can make. You've got propeller choice, you've got slight gradients, you've got powers deliveries. It's quite the choice that one can make in order to improve.
Seems like Team Q8 has entered, or is it console brokers that have going in for their first lap?
Interesting. Console brokers, piloted by and crewed by Alfredo Amato, who is he's a legend in these parts, and he is beside Luca Betti, who is he's pretty good at rally. You know, yeah. I'm not afraid to say that I met him in the paddock, and I'm a big fan, and I embarrassed myself.
I think you were quite right. You did fanboy a little bit.
I did fanboy.
But it's understandable.
I did fanboy. But, you know, what that really means is the presence and the confidence that those two carry as a team is infinite, really. So it's pretty impressive. Yeah, so if it's console brokers that have gone out, then we've got ourselves quite an interesting set of affairs. Crikey. And that's 222 Offshore. Absolutely tearing cats there.
You can't expect anything less from good old Darren Nicholson, eh?
Yeah, we managed to catch up with Darren and his son, who is here. He's got a week off school. He's 15 going on, well, he's 15 going on 15 because, you know, the maturity rates among teenage boys aren't that great sometimes. But he, but it's a real family affair. And we had a good chat about how they're feeling, how the boat's feeling. A very busy team, a very busy set of gentlemen that pilot 222 Offshore. I mentioned it down at the pontoon. They've got Rocco Barocco pasted all over the back. They are probably now one of the best dressed crews.
You're quite right. And obviously, let's not forget to mention Giovanni Capitella, who's also with him in the cockpit. Who is a seasoned racer he began actually racing back in 1993, so very, very experienced, having won multiple European championships and actually holds a lot of speed records.
And interestingly, Darren and Giovanni raced against each other until about, I think they mentioned 2013. There was a bit of a discussion in the paddock, whether it was 2013 or 2017 or 2018. Anyway, we got to the point that they used to race against each other and now they race with each other. And it looks incredibly quick. It tends to be, if it doesn't look quick, it is quick. But you can see it's fairly flat out there at the moment. Very different conditions, as I mentioned earlier, to official practice this morning, where we come to Italy for the weather, we come to Italy for the wine, we come to Italy for the pizza, all the other kind of classics. What we don't come here for is the rain, which is what arrived with us this morning. The teams went out for practice in the rain. It was choppy, it was windy, dare I say it, it was cold, and it was not a great experience for the pilots. But they have started posting their fastest laps, or their timed laps, and we're starting to see them come through. And as we talk about 222 Offshore there, that is a very good time. Won't keep you in suspense. Maybe I'll give the honour to John, the first pole position of the year.
Thank you very much, Drew. So it's 3 minutes and 6 seconds. So actually, they're somewhere in between. Not as good as practice, 3:05 in practice and 3:08, but right in between. So pretty quick. If you think that Team GB, their best time was 3 minutes and 4 seconds, so they're up there.
Interesting stuff. So they've gone out. It kind of feels like it was still very, very, it's actually down the back end of the course there. That actually looks quite choppy. And you can see there the wind, the team managers and the members of the team in the official team area there. There we can see Shelley, manager of Team GB, a very experienced powerboat individual in her own right. And a very interesting interview. I do recommend everybody tune in to the interviews in the highlights programming that comes out after the lives across the XCAT channels, which is well worth a watch and a listen to if I'm being completely and totally biased. And you can see there that actually there is an awful lot of play out there. It looks very, very bumpy towards the back end. That is console brokers there.
He is flying, eh?
Yeah, that is. You can see there he's just pulled ever so slightly off the throttle, because what you don't want is you don't want the boat to be imbalanced there, because all the time the propellers are out of the water, you're not getting any speed. And so Alfredo and Luca out there, what they'll be trying to do is keep the boat on an even keel. That is literally where the saying comes from and what the saying means. They need to keep the boat, as much of the boat in the water, straight as they possibly can. But at the moment, you can see just as the course is laid out, they're going kind of sideways across the waves there in the wake of the other boats as well. And they're just catching a little bit of air. And of course, safety is the single most important thing as they just go through the timing barrier.
A little bit slower, eh? Than 222 offshore, 3 minutes and 12 seconds. That said, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing where they're going to end up towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
If you think about the sporting and racing pedigree within that cockpit, I mean, you have Alfredo Amato, his father Egidio was part of the Italian National Olympic Committee, Luca Betti, as you mentioned, World Rally Championship.
Yeah.
That said, how do you think that experience will fare in actual powerboating?
Well, we had a chat with him about this, and there are two sides of that. There's my opinion, which is completely and totally invalid, or there's how he feels. He's used to pressure. He's used to just the physicality of quickly turning on a sixpence. The boat will react, not exactly like a rally car, obviously, but the fact that there are turns of direction, the physical impact of the actual the driving and the piloting, that will have an impact on the human body. And he is a chap who is in shape. He's used to being put under physical pressures. And then you double that with Alfredo, who is great.
And yeah, I'd say Luca is also a candidate for best beard on the paddock
100%,
as well.
100%. It's quite the grooming.
So it seems like Swecat has entered their timed lap. One of the youngest teams on the grid. Sebastian, the driver, is the youngest at 27 years old. But I guess what he lacks in age, he makes up in speed. So let's see what he's gonna get done now.
Yeah. And we spoke to Seb and Sven, who is sat next to him, and they're quiet, they're composed, they're polite, but there is something behind their eyes where they are just steely competitors. Swecat as a team, they're no stranger to competitive powerboating in multiple classes. It's great to see them here. It's great to see them out there doing what they do. One of the most striking liveries.
That's for sure.
And it's great to see. And there we have Fazza, formerly Dubai Police, currently Legends.
That's quite right. Nadir Behendi and Arif Alzafain definitely wants to look out for throughout the whole season. And we have Swecat with her timing, 3 minutes and 21 seconds. Bit of a slow one, eh? In comparison.
And do you know what? It's hard for us to tell from our commentary booth, but we do have a beautiful view of the water, as you can imagine. It looks like the wind has changed and it's starting to chop up that water. You can see it there, Fazza just jumping over the start-finish straight there, over the start-finish line, sorry. And it's looking ever so slightly changeable. And when you think, well, that can't make that big a difference in such a short space of time, well, all you've got to do is look at the time differences between 222 Offshore, who were the first team to put in a competitive lap of 3 minutes 6 and 200th of a second, all the way down to Swecat, who were posted a time of 3:21. You're looking at the best part of 15 seconds there, just because the wind change and the conditions are so changeable.
And Kuwait Oils seems like they're entering their race lap. Bit embarrassing. Q8 Oil standing for Kuwait Oils.
Someone didn't know that earlier today, or yesterday. We were sat going through the teams as we regularly do. John and I spend a lot of time with each other, probably too much time, and we were discussing the teams over dinner, as you do. And I did have to very quietly and gently explain that Kuwait Oils is Kuwait from the country, which is where Rahib, the team, come from. And it's great. I love the Kuwait livery. It's very on vogue. It's very 90s almost.
It is.
Not to turn this into a fashion parade, but it's important. The visuals are important. In fact, if you're watching at home, tell us which one so far is your favourite, because it's important. We have these discussions. It's the kind of thing that we talk about as fans over a cup of coffee. Yeah, they're fast and they're interesting, but which ones look the best? Because when you're young and you're getting into a sport, of different disciplines, which is great to see. So at this moment in time, we do only have 3 official timed laps, and that is 222 Offshore, Console Brokers, and Swecat. They are the only 3 that have currently posted an official time, and you can see just how windy it is from the state or varying states of hair and where it seems to be in that team manager's area. Plus you can see the paper going everywhere, and that's HPI.
The boys
Italia.
are in the water.
They are. Now, we spoke to them earlier this morning ahead of official practice, and we may have seen, if you've been watching from the start, the pair of them in the console from the pontoon. Brothers, the pair of them. So you've got Giuseppe and Rosario. Lovely boys.
They are indeed. And team manager is the dad, Antonio.
Daddy's the boss.
He is. I wonder how that works. Is it a matter of, the relationship is just the bond is very strong, or do they constantly argue? I wonder.
Do you know what? It's funny because they do get on. They seem. I mean, they're very different characters for a start. Actually, you've got Giuseppe's quite outgoing. He's very chatty. Quite happy to stand in front of camera and talk to people like us. Rosario,
A bit more reserved, eh?
a little bit more reserved. Definitely the speedier freak of the two. I feel it might be him pushing it on. But it looks like they've gone out for their timed lap. These guys are super confident. Super confident.
They are. And we did have the joy to actually witness the whole immersion tests yesterday. If you don't know what that is, basically every 4 months the XCAT drivers need to go through a whole testing session. Obviously it's a very, very dangerous sport. So, they need to prove that they're capable of escaping the actual catamaran in the event of it flipping.
And that's the thing. It is a dangerous sport. There's no way around it. There's not much you can do to avoid that fact. But the reality is, you have to make sure that you're capable of escaping your vessel when it's upturned, when it's upside down. And in those instances, you've got a little escape hatch underneath, which is great. But as you say, we watched yesterday. We watched quite a few of the drivers actually and teams. Both the throttle one and the pilots have to go through it. Essentially, they get strapped into a fake cockpit, and once they're in, they are turned over onto their heads, and it's pretty scary.
You're quite right, but it is quite necessary. So now we have Kuwait Oils in the shot, tearing up the waves. Kuwait Oils with Abdul Latif Al-Omani and Badr Al-Dusari. A bit of a change up in the driver lineup.
And you can just see the amount of spray. And again, it's very hard to convey when you're watching at home just how the weather is, how it's impacting proceedings. But when you see those shots, you can see that it is really picking up in terms of the knots. If you look at a windsock right now, you could see that I was struggling for what word that was. I was going to say all sorts of weird things there. And we've got a boat there. Is that HPI that have come to a stop? Oh, I do hope they haven't got a problem.
We're about 20 minutes in now, Stu, so there's about a bit over 10 minutes to go, so they need to keep the pace up and try and make the best laps in time. As we mentioned, only 2 timed laps are allowed, and yeah, it's make or break for tomorrow's actual race.
Absolutely, and with the pressure is extraordinary, and we see there Abdulatif guiding his Q8 UIM XCAT into what looks like is going to be their second timed lap, and yeah, they're definitely, we've just heard a key change of the engines in here. We've just heard them throttle down, and they are going to go for their second lap. Absolutely no doubt about that now, I think. And actually, so they weren't stopped because of any issue. It was just a super close-up shot of the milling area and the muster area. So this is where the XCATs have to hang around waiting for their timed lap. And it looks like Swecat are going to go for it. They're kind of making a bit of a beeline towards Boy Charlie and Charlie 1, which is the official entry point into this course. As I mentioned earlier, it's an anti-clockwise course. The boats struggle to turn left. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
No, I had absolutely no clue. John and I have been covering XCATs for the last 3 years. So to say we're an expert is probably a step too far, but we know a thing or two about how these work. And something that had never cropped up was the fact that the pilots find it more difficult to turn left than to turn right, and that is physics. It's not because they're incapable of doing it, it's certainly not because the boats are incapable of doing it. It's quite simply, they've got a throttle man in the way.
I guess it's also a matter of preference, just the little details that matter.
Yeah, and you know, not be for us to talk about what goes on behind closed doors and in briefings, but there was a discussion as a championship about whether this course was going to be clockwise or anti-clockwise. Now, of course, if the course had ended up being clockwise, we'd see much quicker times than the 3 minutes 6, the 3 minutes 15s, the 3 minutes 20s that we're currently seeing. We would probably get as far down into maybe the late 2 minutes, to be fair, which would be pretty impressive. But it's looking like Q8 pulled out of that one potentially. And actually, that's an interesting thing. You can pull out of your one of your official timed laps if you bail before you go through the timing gate, which is good, I think. You know. However, you do have to think about your timing, because you do only have a 30-minute slot. And there we see people enjoying it from the shores.
I know, look at this lovely couple, enjoying a little romantic moment while watching XCATs fly right beside them.
We're talking about them. Okay.
Yes, we are talking about them.
We're talking about them. That's fantastic. And console brokers have gone for it.
Alfredo Amato's on it with Luca Betti. Let's see if they can beat their last time. As mentioned, obviously Alfredo Amato, massive sporting and racing pedigree. Alfredo Amato is now the new head of the Offshore Powerboat Teams Association, and has won the European Class 1 title back in 2014. So he can definitely put that cat through its paces.
I enjoyed that. Put his cat through its paces. Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, this is a chap that is extraordinarily experienced. And we just see them going over the timing beacon there. And you can see that they're letting up, but only just. Absolutely flying. Now, it does look like that it's not looking as choppy, basically. The swell seems to have subsided. We don't have a huge issue with tides here so much, which is why it's a perfect place for a harbour. And do you know what? They've been thinking that since Roman days.
Have they?
They have. Bit of an archaeological buff I am in my spare time. And when you're in Italy, and particularly when you're in Rome, you can't help but think about the Romans.
When in Rome? Was that a double entendre?
It was now. So yeah, when in Rome, think about the Romans. But this was where the official Imperial Harbour was. Now it's moved about 3 kilometres further away to where it was officially, but yeah. So I can't remember the point I was trying to make, but I'm sure it was very cerebral.
We have Father Antonio of HPI HPI High Performance Italia, looking like he's strategizing right now. What is he going to tell his two sons to do?
Yeah, well, he's wearing glasses, which usually means work's being done. And
I am actually wearing glasses right now. Does that mean I am actually working?
You are working. Whether you're being paid or not is a different story. But yes, there is a short period of time left, just shy of just over 7 minutes of the qualifying window left, and teams have been posting official times. Mm-hmm. They've been posting their fastest laps. Console brokers who are out there at the moment, they are going for it, and it is very, very tight, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so just a quick update with all the timings. In first place, 222 Offshore with 3 minutes and 6 seconds. Faza with 3 minutes and 12 seconds. Followed by Console Brokers again, 3:12.759. Let's see if they're gonna try catch up with Faza. HPI Racing Team in 4th position with 3 minutes and 19 seconds. And Teams Swecat with 3:21, and Q8 Oils at 3:35. It seems like Team GB hasn't actually entered any of their timed laps.
Yeah. This is really interesting. So Team GB, they had a really strong 2022. Mm-hmm. There was only a few events for the XCAT, but they had a really strong showing in Fujairah. But yeah, either they're hanging back and waiting for everybody else to post their time, and they're going to do 2 successive timed laps. Now, that's a risky strategy, but it could play right into their hands. Let everybody else go out. Team GB know what time they have in the tank. They've gone out, they had a great practice. They're so far during this pole position race, nobody's managed to post a time any better than Team GB during the official practice. Mm-hmm. And the conditions now are